What does it mean to earn your place in a home you never felt belonged to you? For Ethan Carter, that question burned like a coal in his chest, glowing hotter with every passing year. At 18, he stood in the cramped living room of his childhood home, a split-level house in suburban Ohio, listening to his father's voice boom like thunder. "You'll get a say when you pay the bills, boy," Dad had said, his words sharp as a slammed door. Ethan's dreams of college, of a life beyond the peeling paint and endless arguments, were dismissed as childish fantasies. His mother, silent as always, just nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. That moment carved itself into Ethan's soul, a wound that would guide him for the next decade. The house was a battlefield. Ethan's father, Tom, ruled it with an iron fist, his temper flaring over late dinners or unwashed dishes. Money was tight, always tight, and Tom wore his role as provider like a crown, wielding it to silence anyone who dared speak up. Ethan's older sister, Lila, escaped at 20, marrying young and moving across the country. Ethan, though, stayed partly out of duty, partly because he had nowhere else to go. He worked odd jobs after high school, stocking shelves at the local grocery store, mowing lawns, anything to keep his head above water. Every paycheck went to his parents, a silent tax for the privilege of a roof over his head. Yet, no matter how much he contributed, his voice remained unheard. "Pay the bills," Dad would repeat, a mantra that echoed through Ethan's sleepless nights. But Ethan wasn't one to wallow. The rejection fueled him. He enrolled in night classes at a community college, studying business while working double shifts. He learned to budget, to hustle, to dream in secret. In the quiet of his tiny bedroom, he sketched plans not just for a career, but for a life where he'd never again be told he didn't belong. By 22, he landed a job at a small logistics company, starting as a warehouse clerk but quickly climbing the ranks. His knack for numbers and quiet determination caught the eye of his boss, Mr. Hargrove, a gruff but fair man who saw potential where others saw just a kid. Ethan saved every dollar, living on instant noodles and second-hand clothes, his eyes fixed on a goal no one else could see. The twist came unexpectedly, as twists often do. At 24, Ethan met Clara, a coworker with a sharp wit and a laugh that could light up a room. She wasn't just a colleague, she became his confidant, the one person who saw the fire behind his reserved demeanor. Clara had her own scars, parents who'd abandoned her young, leaving her to scrape by in foster care. Over late-night coffee runs, they shared their dreams, their fears, and slowly, a bond that felt like home. Clara wasn't part of Ethan's original plan, but she became the heart of it. She pushed him to think bigger, to stop seeing the house as a prison and start seeing it as a prize. "You're not just proving them wrong," she'd say, her eyes fierce. "You're building something they can't take away." Years passed, and Ethan's savings grew. He moved out at 25, renting a tiny apartment closer to work, but he never forgot the house. It wasn't just wood and brick, it was a symbol of every time he'd been told he wasn't enough. By 27, he was a manager, overseeing a team and earning more than his father ever had. The logistics company was expanding, and Ethan was at the heart of it, negotiating deals and streamlining operations. Clara, now his fiancée, was by his side, her belief in him unwavering. Together, they hatched a plan not just to buy a house, but to buy the house. The opportunity came in Ethan's 28th year. His parents, now older and struggling, had let the house fall into disrepair. The roof leaked, the siding was cracked, and the mortgage payments were a constant strain. Tom's pride kept him from admitting it, but the bank notices piling up on the kitchen counter told the truth. Ethan, now financially secure, saw his chance. He approached the bank discreetly, learning the house was on the brink of foreclosure. With Clara's encouragement, he made an off-era cash deal, no negotiations. The bank accepted, and just like that, the house was his. The boy who'd been told he'd never have a say now held the deed. The day Ethan walked into the living room, keys in hand, was one he'd imagined 1,000 times. His parents were there, unaware of the sale until he showed them the paperwork. Tom's face went pale, then red, his voice rising in disbelief. "You can't do this," he shouted, but Ethan stood tall, his voice steady. "I paid the bills, Dad. This is my say." His mother wept, torn between shame and shock, but Ethan felt no joy in their pain. This wasn't revenge, it was justice, a reclaiming of the space he'd been denied. He gave them 30 days to move out, offering to cover their first month's rent elsewhere. It was more than they'd ever given him. The aftermath wasn't simple. Lila, now back in town after her marriage fell apart, called Ethan cold, accusing him of tearing the family apart. "You didn't have to go that far," she said, her voice trembling over the phone. But Clara, ever the voice of reason, reminded Ethan of the truth. This wasn't about cruelty. It was about breaking a cycle, about refusing to let the past define him. Ethan renovated the house, fixing the roof, painting the walls, making it his own. He and Clara moved in, their laughter filling rooms that once held only anger. They planted a garden in the backyard, a quiet promise of new beginnings. Looking back, Ethan realized the house wasn't the real victory. It was what it represented, the right to be heard, to build a life on his own terms. He thought of his father's words, once a chain around his heart, now just a memory. He forgave Tom, not because he deserved it, but because Ethan refused to carry that weight any longer. The house, once a battlefield, was now a homey, a place where Clara's laughter echoed, where their future children would grow, where no one would ever be silenced for not paying the bills. What does it mean to earn your place? For Ethan, it meant rewriting his story, not with anger, but with resilience. It meant turning a wound into a foundation, a house into a home. And as he stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky, he knew he'd done more than pay the bills. He'd paid the price of his own freedom.